And we got to talk Commanders. We got to talk Lions. We got to talk college football. So let's do so with the man that is the radio analyst for the Michigan Wolverines, played for both franchises in the NFL, and we know he's going to be very opinionated about all things college football and the NFL, and that, of course, is Jon Jansen. Does a great job now as the morning co-host on 97.1 The Ticket in Detroit. John, how you been?
Zach, good to see you. How you been? I've had some better times other than watching my former franchise beat down another former franchise that I'm now talking about on a daily basis. But hey, that's the game. That's football, and such is life.
Yeah, like, were you happy on Saturday night? It was probably mixed emotions.
It was definitely mixed emotions, and no, I wasn't really happy. It's I cover the Lions. I've known Dan Dan and I were in the same draft. Hank Fraley, the offensive line coach, Mark Brunell, Antoine Randall, teammates. They're now on the staff here in Detroit. So it was a bittersweet win for me for Washington, but right now my heart's in Detroit. So it was tough and unexpected. Honestly, there wasn't a lot of people that were picking Washington to come away with the win, but that's why you play the game. You don't play it on paper, and stats don't always tell the full story. The only stat that matters is the win-loss column and those that are still playing, and Washington's still playing, as well as the game tonight. Ohio State, they're still playing as well.
Well, let me get to the lines in just a second, but before we brought you on, I was talking about the Commanders and Jaden Daniels, and this is how far I'm willing to go right now, and it's pretty far. I think he's already a top 5 quarterback in the NFL, right? Mahomes, you got Burrow, you got Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson. After that, the 5th spot is up for grabs. The only other person currently playing that I would maybe put in that conversation is Matthew Stafford. But what Daniels has been able to do, holy smokes, this is really something.
It really is. And to think that, and the 12 games that they won in the regular season, the only playoff team that they beat was against Philadelphia. So that's what led me to start to believe, well, maybe it was a little bit of fool's gold for a rookie. He has improved every week throughout the course of this season. And then you look what he did against Tampa and the game-winning drive at the end. You look how composed he was at every step of the way in Ford Field. That stadium was primed and the top was ready to blow off it, but he handled it as a seasoned vet. And then you look at what he did to the defense. There was no blitz. There was no coverage that he wasn't comfortable trying to dissect. And when you've got a skill set like his, I'm not going to put him in Lamar Jackson's category yet, but it's very similar. Josh Allen as well. When you've got a mobile quarterback that you can call runs for at the next level, that is really good at reading defenses and putting his team in the best play. He doesn't care what the stats are in terms of the passes, the completions, or his rush yardage. When you get that unselfish play and the knowledge that he brings to the game, I mean, it's going to be exciting for that franchise for the foreseeable future, as long as he stays healthy.
Jon Jansen here with us. So a lot to get through on the Lions, but just looking back at the game, what did you think the biggest play of the game was? Because I know what I think it is, but I'm curious what you think it is.
I would go back to when it all started, and that's the fumble on 3rd down. First of all, I'm not sure why the Lions didn't run it, but Jared Goff has to have the awareness of when the pocket collapsed. And that's what you thought, a guy that's been in the league as long as he's played in the Super Bowl, what they did in the playoffs last year. He's got great experience, and the pocket presence that he showed all season long didn't lead me to believe that he'd have a moment like that where, as the pocket collapses, he doesn't put 2 hands on the ball. He doesn't tuck it. He doesn't throw it away. And to make the ball vulnerable at that point, that's where, if they're able to go up at that point 14-3, I think they're able to put a lot of pressure on Washington and do what they want to do. But that was the turning point for me. In fact, that's the moment where I was watching it at home. I told the kids, I'm going in the other room because there are certain things that I'm going to say that I don't want you repeating at school. I don't want to hear again. There's going to be new ways to use certain words. And it snowballed from there.
I thought it was the Sanders first interception. And this is going to put you in a tough spot again, because I know you love Mikey being a Michigan man, and he's with the Commanders, but that's what he did at Michigan, and now he's doing it in the NFL. If he doesn't make that interception, they either make a 10-point deficit, 7 or 3, with the touchdown or a field goal. We'll see what they would have got there. And then they get the stop coming out of half, and then they get a touchdown. So if they would have got a touchdown on that drive, they take the lead in the second half, and they would have got a field goal. they would have tied the game. I thought that was the biggest play.
Yeah, I'm not going to argue it. I just went with the one that I thought started the snowball effect and the downhill run from there. But how about the way that the Commanders are set up on both sides of the ball? The leadership that Jaden Daniels shows on offense and his command of the offense and be able to read defenses and do what he did. And then Mikey Sanders in the same draft a little bit later. I knew coming out of college that he was going to be, and I was really excited that he went to Washington. Obviously, I've still got a lot of affection for that franchise. But when you get a player of his ability and his leadership, that's really where I think that franchise did a great job of drafting two leaders on both sides of the ball. And I'm not discounting anybody else there, but I think they're set up for some good things because of the quality and the character that they drafted, more so than the players that they drafted.
Jon Jansen here with us. When you walk away from this game and you look at the future of Jared Goff, we know he's not going anywhere. He's under contract and he's getting highly compensated in this league to not have those moments that he had on Saturday night. Do you still feel like Goff can win a Super Bowl with the Lions?
I do. And I mean, I go back to last year when he led this team to an NFC championship game. It was unlikely. Nobody expected it last year. But the reason they lost in San Francisco wasn't because of Jared Goff. It was, an interception that should have happened. It goes off Kendall Vildor's face mask and into Ayuk's arms. It's Jahmyr Gibbs. There's a rookie with the fumble. And he put the ball right in the hands of Josh Reynolds on 4th and 2. They convert that one, and maybe it's, they would have been in the Super Bowl last year. I don't necessarily want to put it on him, all of it. Obviously, you have a fumble and you throw 3 interceptions. There's plenty to go around. But I still think that Detroit can win with Jared Goff. I mean, they were a team that was 15-2. They had gone into Dallas. They had gone into Green Bay, into Minnesota. Minnesota, they were down 10-0 to start the game. Ended up, I think it was David Montgomery fumbled late in the game. Jared Goff took him on a drive to put him in field goal position. He's still got those qualities. He just picked the wrong day to have a bad day.
Jon Jansen here with us, and then you get the news a little bit about an hour ago that Ben Johnson is going to be the next head coach of the Bears. Your immediate reaction to that?
Well, I just stood up after getting kicked in the nuts. Now I get kicked in the nuts again, and it's just we knew Ben was going to be a highly sought-after commodity. Aaron Glenn, I don't think he's far behind, whether it's the Jets or the Saints. So, this is where I gain comfort with the Detroit Lions, and that is you've got your quarterback locked up. You've got your stud offensive lineman and Penei Sewell locked up. Aiden Hutchinson is going to be back. He's going to be healthy. You look around, and Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jamison Williams, Jahmyr Gibbs, they've got a lot of talent at the key positions. This year they were banged up on defense, but talent-wise, as players are going to be there. And I just talked about leadership from the players' position. It's got to start with the head coach. Dan Campbell is as good a leader as you're going to find. He's going to do a fine job of finding a replacement. And I don't know where it comes from. It may come within. He talked about it today. He may promote from within. And whether it's, Tanner Engstrom, that name's been thrown around a lot. Mark Brunell's name's been thrown around. They could find somebody offensively to step in. But this is Dan Campbell's offense. It's the vision of Dan Campbell. Ben Johnson is a terrific play caller, and we'll find out who's the creative mind. Is it Ben Johnson? Is it Dan Campbell? Is it the staff? Who does Ben take with him? I think maybe that's the bigger concern is who goes with Ben Johnson to Chicago. So there's still a lot of questions, but go back to Dan's first year. Anthony Lynn was the offensive coordinator. It wasn't what Dan wanted, so he removed those responsibilities, ended up the following year giving it to Ben Johnson. This is Dan Campbell's offense, and it's going to remain Dan Campbell's offense. So I'm going to be okay. Lions fans are going to be okay. I think there's still really good days ahead.
With what you're saying, do we maybe from afar, and you're there every day with the Lions talking about them, do we overpraise them, Ben Johnson, a little bit too much, you think, nationally?
Well, no, I don't think so. I mean, he's the one calling the plays. And anytime you talk about a staff, it's always it's a collaborative effort. And you got one guy calling the plays because that's all there's time for on game day. But when you think about, the offensive minds that I just mentioned that are in there. I'll throw Hank Fraley in that as well. There's still plenty of guys there that are very creative, and that's the debate we've had here in Detroit is, did this Lions offense and the skill and the talent make Ben Johnson, or did Ben Johnson make the talent and the skill? And it's I don't know where the 51 lies, but I'm hoping that the 51 still lies in Detroit.
Like, do you think, is he a good leader of men? Like, it's one thing to call the plays. It's one thing to have all these different crazy designs and these trick plays. We've seen a lot of innovative offensive minds before not translate into being good head coaches. I know it's Chicago, right? They got a quarterback that I still think could be good in Caleb Williams, but there's always, you're looking at the Bears and you're saying, how are they going to mess this up, right? It's just the truth of the situation. So how do you think he'll transition going from OC to head coach?
That's the unknown. And if anybody tells you, other than Ben Johnson, what his plan is, how he's going to go about it, how he's going to change the culture in Chicago, they're all going to be speculating. And what I do know is he could have taken a job last year. And whether it was unfinished business that's still left undone here in Detroit, or he just still wanted to learn more from Dan in terms of how he instilled the culture, because Ben Johnson was here before Dan got here on the staff prior to that. So, obviously Dan saw enough to keep him around. Dan saw enough to promote him. How much has he learned from all the different stops that he's been at that he can implement for his style of coaching? His style is not going to be the same as Dan Campbell. It's not going to be the same as Dan Quinn, who we saw across the other field, on Saturday night. He's going to have to create his own style. As long as he's authentic in what he tells the players, how he treats the players, and how he handles himself, he's going to be just fine.
Now, my brain is like spinning in a million directions since finding out Ben Johnson's going to the Bears, because we know he's off the board when a lot of people, including myself, didn't think that was going to happen, him going to the Bears. We know Vrabel is already in Foxborough, was introduced, and there's 5 jobs remaining. I kind of feel now Mike McCarthy goes to the Saints, because all we heard is McCarthy's going to be either the coach of the Saints or the Bears. Aaron Glenn, it's been Saints or Jets. Like, where do you think Glenn is going? I'm going to say right now it's the Jets.
I think you're right. I think it'll be the Jets. I mean, it's where he played. He's very familiar with the surroundings. He's very familiar with the franchise. And you're going to need a guy. And they love having defensive-minded head coaches. Obviously, that's what they were just coming from. And the defense took a little bit of a step back this year. And I would be surprised if he went anywhere than that. Because, and here's the thing, when you think about Ben Johnson, why did he make that decision to go to Chicago? Well, he's got a young quarterback. He's got a terrific receiving core. So he's got some things to build around. Why would Aaron Glenn go to the Jets, even though it seems like it's a weird organization and there's a lot of drama? There's always going to be some drama because it's New York. But he's got one of the best corners to play the game in a short time. That's Sauce Gardner. You look at that defense, and there's playmakers up front. They've invested in the defense. So as a defensive play caller, it seems logical to me that he'd want to go somewhere that he knows he could insert himself, and at least on one side of the ball, they could be dominant going into next season.
How do you kind of look back at the NFC North this year? Because the Vikings and Lions, the great regular seasons, duds in the postseason, Bears, a dud throughout the entirety of the season, and the Packers, they were good, but we thought they could take that next step into going back to being Super Bowl contenders, and they weren't able to do that.
I don't know. It seems like the NFC North is kind of the SEC of pro football, and they just kind of lay those eggs. It's a little shot from Big Ten country, but it was a great regular season, and we know that the regular season it's 17 opportunities to set you up for a great position in the playoffs, and nobody did it better than the Detroit Lions. They took care of the Vikings twice, especially at the end of the year with all the marbles on the line. They took care of the Packers. Obviously, they took care of the Bears. And so it's, I still think it's one of the best divisions in football, but they sure didn't show up in the playoffs.
All righty, so we're in the last few hours of the Michigan Wolverines being national champions. When Michigan beat Ohio State this year, which I may or may not remember a conversation we had in the summer in Las Vegas as I was having a few drinks. I remember you were smoking a cigar, and we were like, man, how awesome would it be if Michigan could beat Ohio State this year? And they did it. When that happened in late November, if I would have said to you, John, Ohio State's going to win the national championship, you would have never believed it, right?
That's not true. When you look at this team, as long as they get their heads screwed on straight, this is this is maybe the most talented team in college football this year. And I know some people have gone way off the rails and said it's the most talented team in college football ever. I'm not going to go that far, but what they invested in it with NIL dollars and the transfer portal, it really is a very talented team. And it's just a matter of, and for whatever reason, Michigan is in the head of the players, the coaches, the play callers, whatever it is. I don't know. And obviously we were on the other side of that for 17 years. So I'll take the 4 that we have right now. But when you force a coach and an entire side of the ball to completely get and ignore what they've done all season long, and maybe, that was the game that is the impetus for what they're doing now in the playoffs, because they did not throw the ball other than a 2-minute drive right before half where they went down. They had 3 timeouts, didn't need to spend any of them, and put the ball right in the end zone. I thought coming out of halftime, it was going to be, Buckeye, it was going to be air raid all over the field, and they didn't. And I still have no idea why. I would love to hear from the coaching staff as to why they did what they did.
I'll tell you why. It's because Harbaugh, Stallions, and all these guys, the born on third base comments, they were still in the head of Ryan Day, and he tried to win a certain way, right? Be a tough football team, run the football instead of do what is best for Ohio State, and that was to get the ball to Ibuka and then also Smith.
Well, I know it, and the whole goal is to win, right? I mean, if you're going to have a measuring contest, it's in number of wins and points at the end of the game, and it's the last 3 teams that Michigan has had, they've been built to compete and even beat Ohio State. This year's team was not, and I just don't understand. So since then, though, what have we seen? Jeremiah Smith has been on an absolute tear. Will Howard, and you can say whatever you want about him as a game manager, as just a guy that distributes the football. He's done a good job of protecting the ball, making the plays that are there to be made, and honestly, just putting the ball in the same zip code as some of those receivers. That's all you simply got to do. And if they do that tonight, they'll be national champs.
You think Ohio State's going to win? Because we know Notre Dame, right? Good defense, special teams, just like Michigan, and then their offense. Jeremiah Love's a heck of a player, but Riley Leonard is kind of a question mark.
I don't know. I mean, if you ask me who I want to win, I might have to disconnect. I don't know. I'm not sure I like Notre Dame.
I'll say it for
better.
you. You want Notre Dame to win. I want Notre Dame to win. Let's call a spade here.
It can end in a tie. I mean, I know there's there's epic cold and snow. I mean, maybe something happens that they just call the game off at the end of the third quarter in a tie. I don't know. But I think it's going to be a hell of a lot of fun. I think it's a great matchup, and we can argue all we want about the 12-team playoff. I do think that the best 2 teams are squaring off for the national championship. However they got here, right, wrong, or indifferent, I think it's the 2 best teams, and I do like the matchup. I like Notre Dame's defense playing against Ohio State's offense. I think it's going to be a lot of fun, and we'll see what happens.
He's Jon Jansen. Does a great job, co-host of the morning show on 97.1 The Ticket. Does the Michigan games, obviously, as their color analyst, and we appreciate him jumping on board with us today on what was a very busy, conflicting day of emotion, if you are Jon Jansen.
It is, yeah. Hey, thanks, Zach, for having me, and we'll talk to you again soon.